I thought you probably would, but you know, because we are amazing. Do you think you need more people up here?
Unless you want to sit up here. I don't
No.
think so.
Maybe we can grab a table over here to. You want a table over there? Maybe. What? Well, Candy, you're signing in over there, aren't you? Okay, let me just go over here. And they came on time.
Yeah, I think that was.
Early even.
Oh,
And then Rick, I'll get connected to Zoom whenever you're ready for me to. Is it for you?
I guess, I don't know. I don't need it if you want to put it over there.
Somewhere. I brought my jacket just in case.
I'm gonna go back to the office and not come back.
Okay.
After I start the one.
And. Yeah.
I put the trash can line in case you need it. Okay. Can you put it by the,
at least one face-to-face meeting so we can all get together and recognize each other off Zoom. Next time I'll be sure to give people more notice, and we won't pick a holiday, so. But those who weren't able to make it because of the holiday have been given accommodations, so. So let's go ahead and get started. And I can tell you right now, we won't keep you here. I won't keep you here the whole time until 5. So let's call to order at 3:10. Provost Holloway, it doesn't count if I take parts of my costume off while, right? Okay, okay,
That's good.
okay, thanks.
You've worked,
Thank you.
we have a deal.
Yes. So the first item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Not seeing, hearing any. Agenda's approved. Next item, approval of the September 26th, 2023 meeting minutes. Any additions, deletions, corrections? Therefore, the meeting minutes are approved. And we have one revision to today's agenda. President Stokes apologizes. She wimped out and knew we were coming in costume, and so no, I'm just kidding. Something came up at the last minute, so she's not able to attend. So we will move on to the next agenda item, the provost report from Monster University.
Yes. Provost Mike Wazowski, Monster University. Actually, Faculty Senate President Chris Elder and I thought that there was a distinct lack of color in the sartorial choices of faculty on this campus, so we would do something about that. I'm actually going to share a couple of things from the president before I get into my report. And so just again, just a couple of things from the president. So one, and these are really regent items. One of the things the regents are doing right now is working on her annual objectives. That's actually been a fairly long process for them. But every year they put together a set of objectives for the president, things that they want her to accomplish. That winds up driving really the work and objectives of a lot of us in the administration. So it's a fairly consequential piece. It's not quite there yet, but hopefully will be soon. The other thing that the regents are really looking a lot at right now is related to some of the things I'm going to talk about, but they're really looking at the design standards of buildings across campus. And so, by the way, where's the camera in this room?
Right there.
Aha, okay, so I'm really in the realm here. And so, you know, we've got a number of building projects going on, hospital towers going up, at the psychiatric center, Center for Collaborative Arts Technology is about to start. We've got a new Welcome Center going, a number of projects, major construction or renovation projects going on. And the regents have weighed in and sort of their concern that UNM should have a sense of place that is unique and unique to New Mexico. And it kind of starts with the kind of John Dawes style that in some ways sets a standard of character for the place. And they're really worried about that we've drifted too far away from that. And so they put together a architectural design review committee, a Regents architectural design review committee. First, to really pay a lot of attention to CCAT because it's rolling along fairly quickly. Also, another building that's not a university building, but is going up on campus. I saw that. I'm on Twitter all over the place today. The UNM Foundation is currently off campus. They're building a new building on the corner of Yale and Lomas. So that's another building that's kind of in that stage of architectural design that the Regents are concerned about. How do we make sure that building, CCAT, somehow fit a style, fit the place of UNM? And we don't really have a clear definition of design standards at UNM. So this is a little tricky. We don't have a clear set of principles that an architect could use to say, okay, follow these principles, these design standards, and we're okay. And so the Regents are really taking a very active role in looking at the way these buildings are. So again, just two items that the president wanted you to hear about, things that are on this. Okay, we can jump into mine. And so provost report for today, at least from Monsters University. We can go to the next slide. So I mentioned some capital projects. I just kind of wanted to update folks on a few particularly significant ones that are going on within the kind of academic affairs sphere. One is a new welcome center. So that's down on Yale. To where the old Naval ROTC unit was, so halfway down Yale to Lomas, kind of just north of the president's house. That'll be opening this spring. It's getting pretty close to done. So we're really excited about that because right now, if you're a student or family doing a tour of this campus, you go down to South Campus, you park down there, you meet your tour down there, we bus you up here. It's kind of we have a new welcome center there. Students and their families can park in the parking structure and start tours from there. And there's going to be some display space in the university as well. The education building is undergoing demolition, and so that's over kind of next to the Kiva, across from Palestad, at the far north end of Cornell Mall. That building is just it's in really bad shape. The foundation is doing what foundations should not do. And so really the best thing to do is to remove the building. So that's ongoing now. A number of buildings are having security enhancements. In almost every case, that means scanners. So we're trying to get every building to have scanner access. And so a bunch of those are ongoing right now. I mentioned the Center for Collaborative Arts Technology. This will be about a $75 million project going in at the south end of Johnson Field on Redondo, just east of George Pearl Hall. And so that building is currently under design. It could be done in about 18 months. They'll have a significant new performance space for student performance. So it's really a learning space for student performance. Right now, we don't have an adequate space for doing, for example, symphony or large band kind of teaching. We occasionally use Popejoy, but that's not a good learning venue because students perform there once and then they can't do it again. So the learning doesn't happen. They get to perform, get feedback, and then perform again. So that's ongoing. Many of you know that this building is hopefully not long for this world, as is its lovely neighbor, the Humanities Building. And so the plan is to take down this building, Ortega, the Humanities Building, and build in this same footprint a Humanities Social Science Complex. Some initial scoping work of what that, what the footprint, what the plan for that building might be has been done. We've gone to the state with an ask for a $120 million project. It's a big project to do. so far, a lot of good things have happened. We got support from the HED Capital Projects Committee this summer. HED put it on their plan as something that they endorse doing. The Legislative Finance Committee is very supportive. We are in the middle of the interesting tussle. So the HED put it in for $60 million, so half the needed cost. That's not unusual, very frequent, but you know, it goes in for too small an amount. If we go fight for more, or we get half of it now and get half of it next year, and kind of we're in that machination. The important part is that it's been endorsed by them. So far, everyone who's looked at this project has said, yes, University of New Mexico needs a new humanities social science complex to replace these two buildings. So that's a positive. And the new SCARE Center is not going to happen. Next slide. I wanted to talk a little bit about funding allocations within academic affairs. And so again, this is academic affairs centric. And so I'm going to talk about 3 tranches of funding that we allocated in July with the new fiscal year. So we got additional ING allocations of about 3.2 million, plus some additional funds that we found in other places, mostly funds that we had unallocated from the previous fiscal year. So 3.2 million of these new allocations actually went to faculty. So big chunk of that is what we call unbudgeted arts and sciences faculty salaries. As many of you know, there's a structural budget deficit within arts and sciences. We've been building that out over the last 3 years. We finish it this year. And so part of that is this 1.2 million going into arts and sciences to fill in that structural deficit. School of Education, School of Engineering has some faculty whose salaries are not budgeted. So one of the habits of the University of New Mexico over the last decade has been to do 2 things. One, to fund faculty on so-called bridge funding, meaning we don't really have the money, but we'll pretend we do. Not a good structure, but we're working through some of those. The other is to take them out of their current role, put them into an administrative role, eat up their salary on something else, and when they step out of the administrative role, they're not funded. So we're removing a whole bunch of those kinds of things in a number of units. So unbudgeted salaries in engineering. We're adding another faculty line focused on substance abuse. One of the Regent's priorities is to really have UNM develop a center of excellence in substance use disorders. We've got a lot of strengths here between HSC, CASA, psychology, sociology, economics. A number of units have the ability to contribute, new public health school and so on. And so we're adding an additional line that will be in psychology supporting CASA. We've got a program with NIH called NIH First, which is meant to, it's an NIH funded program to help diversify faculty. In this case, the program is in neurosciences and related fields. And so we're funding, I think that's 3 faculty lines in that tranche. The School of Engineering, in addition, we're trying to grow. They've got some departments with really poor student faculty ratios. And in addition, one of the things that we're working with the state on is increasing our capacity to graduate students in STEM in alignment with the state's economic development plan. Film and digital, same story. We've been adding faculty every year to film and digital. It's got one of the worst faculty to student ratios on campus because it's incredibly popular. There's a huge need for faculty there. So we've been adding folks there the last several years and continuing that. We're hiring doing a cluster hire in quantum information and control. This is based across physics, chemistry, engineering, other disciplines potentially. And that's in support of a new category 3 center that I'll describe in a little bit. Education, we over the last 2 years grown education significantly, huge need in the state to train teachers, and that's a very labor intensive process. Not just teachers, but all of the fields and disciplines that support the learning of young people. So we've been growing education, and we're doing one more piece of that here, one faculty line in health. Arts and Sciences Dean, new dean, they asked for money, we gave them some money. Other administrative commitments, we're also putting funding into advising. This is recurring funding. We're also putting a bunch of one-time funding into advising right now to build in to the budget next year. Next slide. So by the way, that was about 3.9 million. Another tranche of new funding we got was funding from the state, 1.8 million, specifically to support faculty salaries. And so that was allocated back in June, July. 690 of it is actually being used for promotions. That's our one kind of consistent merit-based process. And then we looked at, as you probably know, we've done a faculty salary study. I'll show you the latest version of that. And so we can look at each unit and say, how far below what you might expect a Research One university to be spending on salaries is that unit. And it's not that we should necessarily be spending the average of all our ones. Maybe we should spend more, maybe we should spend less, but we have a gap. We're kind of not close. And so closing that gap has been one of our goals. We looked at units that had the lowest paid faculty and the biggest gap. Identifying Education, Human Sciences, and College of Fine Arts as two units with one low paid faculty, meaning their salaries are low in an absolute sense, and the size of the gap is the more significant ones. So we put funding in those units for equity. I did just a little bit in honors. We always do something in arts and sciences. It's actually part of this deficit reduction plan. And so funding there for equity as well. And we're holding about 94,000 in equity funds, plus a little bit of other funds. And the reason we hold that is over the next several months, we will have faculty who have offers. And part of retaining them is having some funds around to be able to go and say, here, we can increase your salary because we actually have funds to do it. Sometimes we've been in this place where we'd really like to retain someone and we just don't have the funds to do it. So we're always trying to make sure that we keep some funds during the year. This is where we were in July. It's not actually where we wanted to be in July, I will say that, because we built a budget for the university with an assumption of a modest tuition increase, about 3%, less than CPI, less than the Higher Education Price Index, but the regents decided not to do that. And so we had to kind of rejigger things in order to build a budget without the revenue that might have come from the tuition increase. And so this is kind of where we landed because of that. I have a big seal of the state of New Mexico up there because we're really grateful that the state has supported these funds. All the higher education organizations, Council of University Presidents, NMACC, the New Mexico Association of Associated Community Colleges, that's our branch campuses, and MICC, the New Mexico Association of Independent Community Colleges. They've all come together, put together a set of priorities for the state. On that again is faculty compensation. Same thing we did last year, to go to the state and argue that faculty compensation is a critical issue. So we don't know yet if we'll get another tranche of funds like this, but we hope we will. And then be able to do some more of this. Okay, next slide. We also got a tranche of funds from the state specifically for student support. And so here we have a lovely student needs support. But where were those funds used? Student Affairs restructured itself in part to build stronger support for basic needs and also to kind of realign Student Affairs as a student success organization. Some specific things, we hired what I'm calling a basic needs caseworker, but it's really a social worker to help students work through things like, how do you apply? Yes, yes, Amy. How do you apply for SNAP? How do you apply for, how do you get Medicare? Things like that. Not on here, by the way, we've also got now what we call an insurance navigator in Shack, which is someone who can help students navigate insurance issues like getting Medicaid. Some of our students are eligible. Again, we did some advising support out of this tranche of funds, and University College, which with this large incoming class of students, many of whom are less prepared than students may have traditionally been, has increased instructional needs. So that's where that's how those funds were used. Next slide. Close to the end. I mentioned the faculty compensation study. You can find the full study posted online at the Office for Academic Personnel website. And what's posted online goes into more detail, but kind of big picture. On the left, we have the salary study from last year that we did at this same time, the academic year 22 to 23. You see number of faculty in various categories, tenure track lecturers, librarians, and the totals. And what's there called the salary delta. That's the difference between what you would expect a Research One university to spend if it were spending the average of folks dependent on their discipline and rank, to the extent that we have those data. And so it's really looking at, you take those expected average salaries and then build a university with our mix of disciplines and ranks. What would you expect to spend? And then what do we spend? And the difference is the delta, right? And so we underspend in that sense by about 12.2 million in last year's study. That doesn't include benefits, by the way. If you put benefits in that, it's more like 16. And then we have the same for this year, the 23-24 data, numbers of faculty and the deltas. Just looking kind of at the bottom line now, it's 11.5 million. It's about 700,000 in progress. We spent more than $700,000 in kind of new faculty funds. So why that difference? Because everybody else increased salaries too. And so it's a game. Every year we do this, we're comparing to the latest national data, and everybody's moving all the time. And so we're not going to simply, for each dollar we put in, we don't get a dollar necessarily. And I'll mention again, just a reminder, this is also academic affairs units focused. Another huge need for the university is in salaries in medical school. The salaries there are really a competitive disadvantage for us and really quite concerning. And so I mentioned that one. That's very round numbers. That's sort of 25 million-ish kind of gap in medical school, probably more, but just to give you a sense of scale. And by the way, this is the data that last year we took and said, look at this gap. And it was hard data for them to look at, in the sense that it was the first time they had kind of like real numbers, as opposed to us just saying we're underpaid. This was useful data in advancing the state to provide that funding specifically to work on faculty salaries. By the way, faculty salaries remain one of the president's goals as determined by the region, so it's still on their minds. Next slide. And then just a few final things. We got some dean searches going on. We have finalists for the Anderson Dean search coming to campus in the next few weeks. We just launched the search for the honors, Dean of Honors. We're preparing for internal searches for University College and graduate studies. So those won't be national searches, they'll be internal searches. I very much appreciate nomination suggestions for folks to be on the search committees for University College and for graduate studies. So feel free to shoot me a note with ideas. We're also reviewing the interim dean of Education and Human Sciences with the potential of bringing him on as the regular dean. We've done a survey of the faculty there to gauge the level of support with both kind of a poll, if you will, and feedback. He's given the college kind of a vision talk of what it would look like, or how he's thinking about being the dean if we were to make that move. So that's ongoing right now. And then finally, I want to mention faculty hiring. So last year, we did a great job. Last year, when we looked at faculty hiring, there were 50% people of color, there were 50% women. It was really terrific. This year, not so good. And so this year, if we look at main campus, 10% Hispanic, 2.5% Native, 2.9% Native American, 1.5% Black, 45% female. HSC, 5% Hispanic, 5% Black, 37% female. Branch is better in terms of just those percentages, but of course, smaller numbers. And so we're really concerned about, I think we were so thrilled last year with where we were, and then this year just kind of, we didn't get there. And so we're really kind of concerned with this and trying to do the work to see if we can't do better this year. And you know, the techniques are known. And so one of the things that the deans are now looking at is that they want to just do a much closer look at pools, right? So when I do a dean search at every stage, I look at the pool and if it's not diverse enough, say, no, go back, make this pool more diverse. We don't let the pool lose diversity as we move through the process. So the deans might think about doing that or having department chairs do that. The other thing that's really important, of course, is active recruiting. Recruiting in spaces where you find minority faculty rather than passive recruiting, waiting for people to apply. But anyway, this is an area of concern for us that we haven't done as well with faculty diversity this year as we had last year. And I think that was the last slide. Oh, no, I'm sorry. There's a few more. Sorry, I have so much to say. I'll be quick on this. We've been working to simplify tuition for the last 3 years or so. And so our tuition structure is incredibly complicated. I've been in higher ed for a long time. I cannot calculate the tuition that a student would pay here. It's just really complicated. You look at the bursars pages that describe it. There's base tuition, differential tuition, fees here, fees there, extra fees on the side. Things that block at this at 12 credits, things that block at 9, things that block at weird other numbers. So it's just been a complex structure. We've been working to simplify it. I'm not going to read all these. We've done a lot of that. And we're now looking at kind of the next few steps of tuition simplification. I won't go into the details on those, but one thing I'll show you, next slide. This is an eye chart. You can't read it. Right now, if you're a student in arts and sciences, you go look at this page and it tells you your base tuition, and it tells you, oh, if you, base tuition per credit hour, and then there's base tuition if you take 15 credit hours or more, and you might think to look at those and connect them, hopefully. And then you might think to look somewhere else where it will say there's a differential tuition, but you probably won't. One of the things we're thinking about doing is presenting to students a much simpler just presentation of our structure, in which we say, oh, if you're an architect, or let's do College of Arts and Sciences, if you're in Arts and Sciences, your tuition is $293.98 per credit hour, or $4,409 if you hit the 15 credit hour block. Not talk about differential and base, which don't mean a whole lot to them. That's our internal accounting process. It's nothing to do with the student, they just pay it. So we're thinking about presenting tuition to them in a different way. One wrinkle on this that's annoying is the state only pays what we call base tuition. They don't pay differential tuitions with the Opportunity Scholarship and Lottery Scholarship. Very annoying. So there's still some thinking to do here, because if without changes from the state structure, if we tell a student it's $293.98 per credit hour, part of that will be covered by lottery, but not all of it, by Opportunity, but not all of it. So we need to think that through, but we are thinking about sort of making structural simplifications, actual simplifications, but then thinking about simplifications and how we present our tuition to students so that they can understand it better. And next slide, probably close to done. Oh, this is the last slide. So I mentioned earlier Category 3 centers. So One new category 3 center that's been fully through the approval process is ARID, Accelerating Resilience Innovations in Drylands. This is really looking at transdisciplinary research, interdisciplinary research, creating innovations with communities that are actually implemented in the world, really dealing with how the human societies live successfully in places like New Mexico, drylands. And so this is approved as a category 3 center. The other one that's cooking right now is the Quantum New Mexico Institute. This really builds on strengths we have in physics, strengths we have in engineering, strengths we have at CHDM, but equally importantly, a partnership we have with Sandia National Labs, who are very strong in this area. And this is about quantum computing, quantum information, quantum transmission of information, quantum metrology, how you different new and novel ways to measure things with high precision, or measure very weak signals. And so that's kind of working through the process right now. And the point of these is to, one, it kind of builds in the same vein as the grand challenges. These are activities that are aligned with strengths of New Mexico. They're aligned with our strengths, they're aligned with strengths of our state, they're aligned with needs of our state. The other point is, and we have expertise in these, so we have researchers working here. But the other point is that you leverage these to grow the pie. And so the metrics that I have for the success of these include things like how much additional research funding we get because we build these institutes. ARID has already gotten new grants that we probably wouldn't have if we hadn't brought our work together in a coherent way. So the real point of these kinds of centers is to grow the pie. It's not to divide the same pie differently, but to grow the pie, to grow the research opportunities, increase the number of students we can support, grow the research funding, and undertake research we otherwise do. And I'll stop there. Sorry, that was longer than I expected.
Questions for Provost Holloway?
And polyester is really tough.
Oh, thanks, Vance.
I had a quick question. What is the total ING budget? I'm just trying to get a handle on what 3.2 million that means
For the university as a whole or for academic affairs?
for the, well,
University as a whole, ING is, this is gonna be a very round number and I should send you a precise number. The core, what we call the core fund, which is the pot of ING we generally are talking about is about 440 million. There's other funding, which is strictly ING, things like RPSPs are really ING. So close to 500 million. And that leaves out, the 440 includes the ING that goes to HSC. So say half a billion, that kind of number. Again, most of it goes through that core fund, which is 440.
I was wondering if anyone has looked into the process of getting a department getting approval to hire and then actually posting a job description, because I've been on a search committee 3 years in a row. And there seems to be a lot of lag time between when we get approval, when our committee creates the post, and then it goes through UNM Jobs. So I wonder if there's like a staffing issue or something, because when we're trying to recruit diverse candidates, those are the ones that everyone else is going after as well. And when we post late, then it, dominoes the process. So I was just wondering.
Yeah, we're talking about faculty hires in particular.
Yeah, faculty, sorry.
So yeah, this is definitely something that we're concerned about. So Barbara Rodriguez has been in the last couple of weeks. So we have a new vice president for human resources, Kevin Stevenson. Barbara has been working with Kevin in the last couple of weeks, because we basically we provide funding to human resources to do a bunch of this work for us. We think that just to kind of put it bluntly with it, we're not getting our money's worth. And so Barbara's working with Kevin to kind of restructure the way that work gets done. Now, I do have to say that, yes, there are staffing issues. And so, we see that across the institution, and it's true in human resources as well. So the people who do this work for us are also sitting next to empty desks. And so, but it is a combination of, kind of changing the way that some of these basic processes are done, but also filling in some of those, those missing people, in this process. But yes, we agree, it takes too long.
Thanks. Okay.
Another question. So after you level the humanities building in this building and you're building the other one, where will the humanities people be?
Isn't that a great question?
I would wait for
That's part of the process of planning the building, is figuring out what is the, where do we find the swing space? And I don't have an answer for that today, but that is part of the planning of building the building is also first figuring out the swing space, where people are and whether that's rented space. These are not necessarily things we would do. These are things that can be done. We put up a temporary building, to places that do that. We rent space. Where would we rent space, you might ask? That's sort of a key thing. College of Population Health is currently putting faculty down on South Campus, for example, while they're working on expanding their own building a building to that. So I don't have a concrete answer, but it's part of the planning process.
I think that mechanical engineering going to get a new building in 2 years. Is that true?
News to me. And if it's news to me, it's probably not happening.
I think here I didn't, no, don't mention it. I said, yeah.
She may want it.
Okay.
That's not quite the same thing.
Provost Holloway, I have a question that I was asked to ask you. Do you know of any change in the tuition remission benefits moving from being charged to, rather than being charged to the main university index, moving to a charge to department index?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I don't know one way or the other.
And do you
We can
know
ask.
who I could follow up with?
Teresa, ask Teresa,
Oh, okay, thanks.
or actually ask Barbara, she'd probably know too.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Betty Coleman has questions.
So,
I'm just noticing that I'm wearing all one color, you're wearing all.
Well,
one color.
also, we'll notice like they don't even want to sit next to me, so thanks.
a bird flu.
Yeah, bird flu. And I'm going trick or treating with his nieces and nephews, so the least he could have done was dress up.
I am dressed up.
He has a plan. But your question,
So my question is, I've heard a couple of times about a potential plan to link North Campus and South Campus with a plaza. Is that something that is like a real possibility?
so. Big answer and then a specific answer. So currently the university is undertaking what we call the integrated campus plan. It's what used to be called a master plan, but it's being done by an outside architecture firm, Sasaki. Some of you may have been involved in some of their listening sessions. But that plan is looking at kind of everything that the university owns. That's a big statement, because that's everything in Albuquerque, all the branch campuses, all the off pieces of land that we have spread across the state, a bunch of them. And thinking about, okay, given what we know about where the university is going, what are the potential future uses of those lands? From an academic standpoint, a research standpoint, auxiliary standpoint, commercial standpoint. One of the things that group does is look at the connections between parts of campus. And so part of that is to look at, okay, what could we do with Lomas? And they put forward notions. I'm calling them notions because that's really what they are. They're not, oh, we're going to do that. And those notions have included everything from a bridge, not bridges, a bridge, to changing Lomas to make it much more pedestrian friendly, so that crossing it is easier to do. None of those notions have suggested closing Lomas or burying Lomas, which is $1 billion sort of notion. So the bottom line is the integrated campus plan and the work that those folks are doing is looking at these connectivity questions to try and make recommendations for how we could lower that barrier. And whether that's all the way to closing and having a park there or changing the way the street works to make it more pedestrian friendly. All of those things could be suggested by them. I want to mention that they make really good observations. Even here in the main campus, we've tended to make flow difficult. Flow north-south isn't too bad, flow east-west is terrible. And so they're making a bunch of recommendations about opening up our east-west paths as well. So it's not always about crossing Lomas. Even here in Central Campus, we have some just build barriers that we don't need.
Go ahead.
So,
Go ahead. Well, why don't you go for, and then Vinny can ask his next one.
let me ask the same.
City lasts forever.
So I just am curious about this Lobo Development Corporation and how that fits in with overall planning for actual academic activities, or is that largely for fund generation? I guess I don't understand.
Yeah, so Lobo Development Corporation is a separate legal entity that is under the purview of the regents. And their charge really is to manage the commercial development of university properties. And so they don't work on academic buildings or academic spaces, but they do look at opportunities like we rent a bunch of space to people. And so that generates revenue. And so when we look at that whole South Campus development along University, that's mostly, not entirely, but a bunch of that south of the pit basically is slated for commercial development. We own that. And so as it's commercially developed, what we'll be doing is renting that land to places that want to build stores or restaurants or shops or whatever it may be. And so that's the work that Lobo Development does, is negotiate those kinds of deals. One that's happening right now is down at Gibson and by the fire station on Gibson near the entrance of 25. There's a plot of land that's being, I think it's rented, I don't think it's sold, rented to a chicken finger place, so a fast food place. So that kind of development is going on. The goal is to generate revenue for the institution. They're not particularly old or mature, so right now it doesn't generate much. But the potential is pretty significant when you look at all of that empty space down there.
Thank you.
So that's what Lobo Development is. Another example, by the way, I mentioned we're building, well, the foundation is building a building down at Lomas and Yale. That will be on land they rent. The foundation rents from the university. The foundation is not the university. So Lobo Development manages that real estate transaction for the foundation to rent space to build it.
So in the summer, we brought in what looked like was going to be the biggest freshman class maybe
We did
ever. And that there would be implications for that fiscally for the university. I wonder if you could say a little bit about what that class is going to mean fiscally for the university. And if I'm not missing if I'm not misunderstanding, we might be set for another bumper crop class this coming year. If one, I don't know if that's true, but if it is true, if you have any indication that that is true, is it true? But then just the first part of that.
So we did bring in the largest freshman class ever. Equally importantly, we had the largest, not the largest returning class ever, but we had a large number of students returning. So coming back from junior to senior, from sophomore to junior, not dropping out and so on. So we had a growth of enrollment overall, and it's driven by largely those two factors: large freshman class and more current students returning. more current students returning, I should mention, is driven in part by the fact that we've been bringing in increasingly large first-year classes. Excuse me, for the last 4 years. Not new for us to bring in larger and larger first-year classes. So we do have an enrollment growth. Fiscally for the university, that will get baked into next year's budget. And so we never know exactly how much that's gonna pay in. The key question is retention. And we're a little worried about whether retention rates with this group of students will be the same as we historically have seen. Because these are the students who did so much of their high school in COVID. A lot of lost learning, social development that didn't happen. So we're a little uncertain what the retention will look like. Pamela's going to do yeoman's work to try, along with many others, to maintain that retention. But in any event, if that growth holds, and you know, I think there's good reason to say, well, I think, you know, we may see something on the order of $3 million of recurring revenue generated. We bake that into the budget. And again, that's something we watch and we'll know better, especially once we see the retention. I will say one problem we have right now, we actually haven't gotten any of that money. I shouldn't say any, we haven't gotten a lot of that money yet. Because these students, if they're covered by the Opportunity Scholarship, the state pays their bill, and the state hasn't paid their bill. So if the parent were paying, they'd have paid back in September. The state hasn't paid. They might pay 25% of what's owed around now. So problem that we have with Opportunity that a lot of us are kind of, not just you and them, but all the universities we're working on the state with is, you can't pay us months after the fact, because right now we're floating the state, if you will. So that's a new concern that but in any event, there's a fiscal benefit, recurring benefit from that larger class. I think what we're going to see for next year's freshman class is similar to this year. We're not going to keep growing the freshman class. The pool of students probably isn't there. We're not entirely, well, I think there's good reason to believe we're not quite scaled to have a much bigger freshman class. This was as many of you know, this was a challenge. So I don't think we're going to see continually growing first year classes. Not kind of with the pace that we've seen. We've had double-digit growth over the last 4 years. Many double digits, 30%. Don't quote me, but kind of that kind of number. So we're not going to continue to see that. We will continue to see growth overall enrollment because the senior class is smaller than the freshman class. So as those seniors graduate and are replaced by a freshman class of 3,600, we'll see some overall growth. So I think we'll see some continuing overall growth of undergraduates for the next several years, driven not by growing freshman classes, but simply by realizing the benefit of having had growing classes and graduating smaller classes. The place where we're seeing some loss of students in numbers is graduate enrollments. And so that's something we really want the Dean of Graduate Studies to give some real thinking to. What's the right number of students to bring in the graduate class, and that's unit by unit specific. But one of the things we can do uniquely is the Research One University's graduate education. We're the school that can do that. So we ought to be thinking pretty strategically about the graduating. Hopefully, probably more than you want.
Thank you, Provost Holloway. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Next on our agenda is Associate Provost for Student Success, Pamela Cheek, and Dr. Cheek's reports.
Thank you. Well, James set me up perfectly. It's really nice to see all of you. Glad to join you today. So as Provost Holloway was sharing, I've been charged with thinking a lot about retention, and it's all very well for us to admit a bumper crop of students, but then we need to be able to retain them. And the really fortunate thing is that we have an incredible group of dedicated faculty who can make a huge difference if we use the right tested techniques in making sure that our students can be retained. So it's a real privilege to be able to talk to you a little bit about some of our retention challenges and some of the work that I'm trying to coordinate out of academic affairs in collaboration with many units across the university. And I should preface by saying that it's been about a year since I was fortunate in working with our then new VP for Student Affairs, Eric Scott, and also Teresa Vigil from the HSC side, in having a number of focus groups. So November 30th and December 1st, we've had many focus groups with faculty, staff, and students to try to think about what kinds of supports we need to be offering our students. We've also done a lot of stakeholder work and conversations with people at all levels of the university prior to that, as part of the UNM 2040 Goal 2 process, and brought that in as well. So what I want to talk to you about today is just a couple pieces of a broader retention plan that has multiple elements. On the anniversary of those focus groups in which many of your colleagues were consulted, students were consulted, staff were consulted, some administrative folks were consulted. On the anniversary of that, I want to hold a larger sort of workshop and also engagement opportunity that can bring you in and give you the chance to ask more detailed questions and also to supply ideas that you have about how we can address our retention problem. I'm mindful that there's not a lot of time today. And so I just wanted to make sure that you knew that there will be an opportunity to talk more and to learn more from you and to share your ideas. So real quickly, I don't know if you can see there, you'll see actually, yeah, if you can enlarge it a little bit. And I think Provost Holloway has talked with you about this a little bit before. You'll see right in here. So this is at eighth semester is 4 years, right? And 4.6 is our average time to graduation, but only about, unfortunately, 37% are going to be able to graduate in 4 years. And then overall, about 52% of our students will actually graduate ultimately, and then it kind of trails off eventually. But what I want to draw your attention to is this first piece in here, where so there's a decline here, which is because students actually graduate. But then you'll see here that there's actually a pretty rapid decline in the number of students who are enrolled and retained. And what happens in this period is that students probably are leaving the university pretty quickly in that initial period, in those first 2 semesters, not just because maybe it's a bad fit, but also because their academic outcomes, the challenges that they're experiencing academically, are leading them to lose their financial aid very, very rapidly. So I'm starting with this because, one piece of our puzzle is providing our students with the academic supports they need. And a big piece of our puzzle is actually making it possible for them to, through those academic supports, retain their financial aid so that they can stay enrolled in college over the long term. So right now what's happening is we're saying, hey, we're offering you a combination of state legislative scholarships and Pell Grants, and that should carry you through your university time. And what's happening is that because of hitting a variety of academic barriers, students are losing that financial aid very, very rapidly, right? So there's a number of things that we need to be doing around that. And what I want to talk with you today about is the things that we as a faculty can do to try to address those academic challenges that then lead to loss of financial aid. So do you all know the eligibility requirements for retaining state legislative scholarships? You all know 15 credit hours, and what's the other key? The 2.5 GPA, great, yeah, absolutely. And so the most common scenario for our students on the Albuquerque campus, and this will also happen at branch campuses, is that, and this disproportionately is the case for first generation students. We know we have a lot of first generation students. What will often happen is that a student really won't know where they are in a class, right? And you may have had conversations with students who are in this position where they may have just disappeared on you, right? You don't really know what happens. So a student doesn't really know where they are, how they're doing in their class. And they're afraid that they're going to lose their lottery scholarship or their opportunity scholarship. And so they sort of preemptively withdraw from the class. And that typically happens in relation to drop deadlines that we have across the course of the semester. So you'll actually see, if you kind of follow the chart of withdrawing from classes, it's very closely coordinated to the different drop deadlines that we have as an institution. Again, students who have, of course, managed, students, first generation students, nationally and at UNM, disproportionately withdraw from classes. They don't know how to engage the conversation about what would it take for them to be able to pass the class. So they withdraw. That puts them below the 15 credit hours. If we're lucky, we manage to get them into what's colloquially called a credit recovery course or an academic recovery opportunity. So we pop them in something that's late starting that will help them top up the 3 credit hours. But that doesn't always work out, right? If the only class that's going to be available as a late starting class is maybe an upper division, accounting class, and you're actually really interested in performing arts and you are only a lower division student, your likelihood of succeeding in the upper division online accounting class that you popped into just to save your credits is probably relatively low, right? So a disproportionate number of our students are losing their scholarship eligibility very quickly in that first year. It's a series of academic challenges, maybe in addition to a withdrawal or two, there's some fails. And then when we try to provide some kind of recovery opportunity for them, it's a misfit, right? And so then they don't have the financial aid that they need to return for the next semester. And this is part of the story, not the entire story, but it's part of the story that explains why our third semester, so fall to fall retention, is in the 72-73% range, right? We're losing a ton of students off the bat because these academic challenges lead to loss of financial aid, and maybe there's other things going on as well. So, what are the things that we can do? So let's skip down, and let's look at let's start right there. So one of the things that we can do is actually adapt those recovery opportunities better to students, right? Instead of having it be the 300 level accounting class that a first semester freshman is being thrown into as academic recovery. They don't even have the math skills, right? But that's the only class that's available. We can actually create first year experience courses that are available for them as credit recovery in the second half of the semester. And if you're in arts and sciences or in university college, you actually had your associate deans reach out to you to maybe provide some of those adapted courses as late starting courses. We need to be able to do more of that. Academic recovery actually goes beyond just having a first year experience course or some kind of course that's adapted in the second half of the semester. It can also mean, and chemistry does this pretty regularly, having a parachute class. So if you've got a class where there are pretty significant withdrawal and fail rates, it's worth having a conversation with me, with your associate dean, with your chair, about whether you need to create a simultaneous course that's going to maybe start in the third week that students who are already experiencing challenges can just drop into, right? And that will allow them to maintain credit and develop the skills that they need in order to, say, pass chemistry 12-15 the second time around that they take it. And I'm using that example because chemistry currently does have a parachute course. There's a lot of other academic recovery strategies. I'm not going to go into all of them. I'm signaling them right now to you because these are things that faculties can do in their departments to try to proactively address these challenges around students not knowing how they're doing, maybe not doing very well, panicking, and not just missing out on completing the class and getting a grade, but actually wiping out, right, their sense that they can actually complete college in any way, right? Because we know that if they lose their financial aid, even if they come back to us later on, or even if they persist, they're working more and more and more hours to offset those tuition dollars that they're no longer getting from financial aid. And that strings out time to graduation, and it also correlates with a loss of economic opportunity for them in those years that they could have been on the job market, they could have been working, but actually they're still in school, right? Okay, so one area that we can work on is academic recovery, and if that's something you're interested in thinking about, reach out to me. I'd love to think with you about the different modes of academic recovery that are out there. Let's take the next slide. So this is something that you're going to hear more and more about in the next couple of years, and we'll have a specific phase in which particularly faculty who serve as faculty advisors will be onboarded. We are not very good. In fact, some of you who've been around as long as I have know that we have a lot of lack of success with doing preventative early alert work with our students, where we're seeing kind of things kind of stacking up. We're seeing signs, and there needs to be outreach, but we don't have very good coordinated outreach for students proactively before the problem happens. We're really extraordinary. We have incredibly dedicated people at this university. We're really good once the issue comes up in coming in and trying to address it, but sometimes that's too late, right? It would be better to be able to catch things before we get there. So we're actually bringing on what we're calling Chili, a coordinated help in Lobo experience platform. We're going to be onboarding, advising and admissions first and using it. Ultimately, faculty advisors, so your departmental undergraduate advisor will be onboarded as well. It will provide us with the opportunity to do regular communications with students, with cohorts of students, but also to have a shared information source and a team-based approach to proactive outreach to students. So we're not there yet in terms of the faculty onboarding, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it today because I know you have other things you need to do, but I wanted to let you know that we're bringing this tool on in a way that really focuses on the roles that individuals play and not just on the technology. And we're thinking through advising protocols and relationships between advisors and financial aid and the resource centers, and then relationships between advisors and faculty, so that hopefully we will have proactive interventions and also proactive communications to students available to us by the time that we roll this out at every single level. So next slide, Peter.
Pamela,
Yes.
I apologize for interrupting.
No worries.
I let our boss of Monster University run long. So I'm worried about our time.
Do this last bit.
That would be
and I'll be
great.
done.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is just sort of a piece of the whole puzzle. And this is where I actually have a specific ask for you. So your timing in stopping me is perfect, because this is actually where I want to end. And thanks so much for the opportunity. So one of the key challenges for that student who's proactively withdrawing is that they don't know how they're doing in a class, right? And they don't know how they're doing either because they're having a hard time keeping track of everything, or because they're actually not receiving grades in an early and regular fashion. We provide faculty with a lot of support and a lot of latitude around how we do grading, and we do that as part of our commitment to academic freedom. And that's great. And at the same time, we know that students who know where they stand in a class by the 4th week and by the 8th week can make an informed decision about whether they should be withdrawing. And if they don't have that information, they're pretty likely, especially if they're a first generation or historically underrepresented student who doesn't know how to communicate easily with somebody who looks like me, right? they're very likely to jump ship and to take the withdrawal option, which has all of the sequelae that I was talking about. So my ask to you is, as a body, would it be possible for you to think about ways that we could support our colleagues in providing regular, frequent, substantive feedback to students, specifically grades, and also information to our students about how to communicate with us relative to the options that they have for completing a course? That creation of a communication approach is really critical, and specifically the midterm grade or even an early grade is going to be a very, very powerful tool that we can use to support our students and to help retain them. The second thing I wanted to say to you as an ask is that we will be putting out a call, and you'll see a preliminary call around on these lines. We will be putting out a call around, would you work with the university and with academic affairs and Center for Teaching and Learning to address collectively your high fail rate courses? We'd like to support you with an analysis of the issues that you're facing, and also with resources and interventions that could make a difference and that are evidence-based, that have been tested. Keep an eye out for that call. And if you have that kind of course in your department, please join on. No single faculty member is at fault for a high fail rate course. Those are courses that are a challenge for the institution. And so collectively, we can address those challenges by bringing resources to bear. So number one, the grading issue, giving students the information that they need to collaborate with their advisors and with you so that they can make a smart decision about what to do. And number two, specifically for high fail rate courses, and my definition would be over 12.5%, but sadly, I think what the definition has to be over 25% because we have a lot of those courses. Look out for opportunities to collaborate on fixing that problem. There's a big evidence base on how to go around about doing that. So thanks so much for the time, and sorry I went a little bit.
Oh, that's okay.
I have a
Thanks.
question.
Ezra, can I ask you to follow up with Pamela directly? Or sorry, Dr. Cheek.
That's great. And pcheek@unm.edu. You can always reach out to me directly, pcheek@unm.edu. Thanks for your time, everybody.
And Dr. Cheek, I'll be sure we'll be talking together during the closed session about a possible subcommittee in order to support your work, the great work that you're doing with student
Awesome.
success.
Well,
So thank
really
you.
a privilege to talk to all of you today.
Thank you.
It's ended my fault, concert for too long.
And I was just weird Barbie when I was dressed up.
Oh, you didn't, oh man, we missed that?
I just didn't think you'd take me seriously, but you know what? I was gonna play the Indigo Girls Dr. Philosophy song. Right?
Pamela, are you assuming that this body is not taking me seriously right now?
Big Bird actually has our heart and souls, right?
Oh, well, and you know, education from when we were little guys, right? So it's all related. Thank you. Okay. Faculty Senate President's Report next on our agenda. I just have a few things to mention to you all. If you haven't voted already, and if you have, if I can remind you to encourage your constituents, your colleagues in your departments to vote on the revised C200 sabbatical leave policy. This policy is being revised so that it is more in line with the collective bargaining agreement. And if you haven't had a chance to read it yet, I think you all will find that the changes are definitely in support in favor of faculty. So please vote on it yourselves, and also encourage your colleagues to vote. I can't just share, obviously just share a link with you because it's specific to various individuals. Also, a reminder to complete, there's a bargaining survey that is out. The faculty union is renewing its contract in 2024, so we are wrapping up our first 3-year contract in 2024. So work is now starting to be done to write that second contract. So if you haven't been involved or you're not even sure you support a union, you might want to get involved so that your voice is represented in those changes and those pages, and encourage your colleagues to complete that survey, which is a bargaining priority survey. What the faculty union should be prioritizing moving forward, and the changes in the new contract. I've also been asked to remind you of, or to let you know of, the Faculty Senate Governmental Relations Committee, their 2024 capital outlay competition. I will email these guidelines out to you. And as I understand from Pamela Pyle and Barbara Dameron, who are on the Governmental Relations Committee, that competition was begun so that faculty can identify places on campus that need improvement, because their current state negatively impacts our work, either our work with colleagues or our work with students. So I'll send out those guidelines to you. Those proposals are due December 1st. So the C200 vote is open until November 2nd, this Thursday at 11 p.m. And the Government Relations Committee competition, capital outlay competition, is open until December 1st. And I'll follow up and send you all an email on the listserv. Are there any questions that you have for me about these agenda items, or anything else that I might be able to answer for you?
There's
Natalie?
a quick question about the C200 vote. So can any faculty vote on that, or only faculty who are on tenure track and are therefore affected by that policy?
That's a great question. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure is once you reach a certain level are eligible for.
Sabbatical. Yeah. Yeah, that's new with our collective bargaining agreement.
But maybe not clinician educators?
That's correct.
So that's a lot of faculty.
So that's a good point of something you might want to, we can discuss in our brainstorming sessions on how to address that. Yeah. Yes.
I do think it's possible that the number of clinician educators who actually vote on the things that come out regarding things like sabbatical is fairly low. Because they know it doesn't pertain to them. I don't know that for sure, but trying to get them to vote on anything is somewhat challenging. So especially if they see votes that they know absolutely do not pertain to them, it's possible that email gets deleted.
Great point. And how might we encourage people to participate? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on to our next agenda item, the consent agenda. We need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Ezra, and a second, please.
Okay.
Natalie. Okay, so curricular requests and committee appointments are approved. Next on the agenda item is the E30 research data management policy. I was just going to point out, Karen, are you in the room or?
No, she's on
Screen? Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Karen. And hi. And I also wanted to point out Grace Faustino, and Carl Benedict. And for those, Karen, Grace, and Carl, if you could please introduce yourselves really quick for the group, and then please tell us what you'd like us to know about E30.
I'll let Carl and Grace go first, and then I'll end up so I can introduce the policy.
Thank you.
Great. Yes, thanks. And I'm excited to be here today to answer any questions about the policy. I'm Carl Benedict, and I direct the Research Data Services and IT programs in the College of University Libraries and Learning Sciences. And in the context of the policy development, I also now chair the IT Research Technology Advisory Board and chaired the Data Management Working Group that out of which this policy development process started back in 2020.
Hi everyone. My name is Grace Faustino. I'm the manager for IT services and I work in the office of the Vice President for Research. Thank you for having us. Like Carl, we're here to answer any questions and support Karen in this effort. And we will stand for your questions after that.
They're here because they're the real experts. I'm just the talking head that's in charge of the committee this year. So I'm Karen Patterson. I am the chair of the Faculty Senate Policy Committee. And we obviously have worked with Grace and Carl. They've done all the legwork on this. So they've done a ton of work to get this new policy, E30, Research Data Management, into the faculty handbook. They have gone through a number of different feedback loops, including to the Faculty Senate Research Policy and the IT committees. They presented it to the HSC Vice President for Research, HSC Faculty Council, and IT Executive Council, Health Sciences Library, Informatics Center. They've also presented it to smaller groups around campus and talked to multiple people to get this new policy in place. The goal of this is to try and provide further information and guidance to faculty dealing with, research data in our contemporary environment that we have. The Faculty Senate Policy Committee has gone through this. We've looked at it. We've gone through a comment period, made some changes based on the comment period that we thought were very good and important changes to make. And we now, present this policy to the Faculty Senate to move it forward if we could.
Thank you, Karen. Rick, do we have a poll on this?
Yes. The poll only affect these kids.
Okay, yeah, so.
You need a motion and a second.
Okay, and how, because this is my first face-to-face Faculty Senate meeting, I apologize. How are we all going to vote?
By hand.
Just by hand? Okay. 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 Is there a motion to approve, or is there a motion to approve?
Motion to take a vote.
Motion to take a vote. Ezra, you are so good at. Thank you, Ezra. You're so much better. That's right. Maybe you should run for faculty president. Yes, is there a so moved?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Discussion. All those in favor? Got my puppets helping me. All those opposed? Any abstentions?
Okay, it passes.
Looks like it passes unanimously. All
One abstention.
or one abstention, with one abstention. Grace, Carl, thank you so much for all your work on this. And Karen, we owe you a lot of thanks for chairing the policy committee, one of the probably busiest, most difficult Faculty Senate committees to steer. So thank you so much.
We have great help, and really all the thanks on this one goes to Grace and Carl and all they did to make it happen. So thank you all for the support.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is public comment. No, okay. So I had promised you all earlier in this meeting that I wasn't going to keep you till 5. And so I'm not gonna break my promise. I will just tell you how I want to move forward from here. Also too, I'm gonna take this off so that you all can recognize me possibly when you see me on campus, so you can say hello. And if you have any more yellow feathers, send them my way. Because this was a little bit addicting, gluing these things on. So with the survey that was sent out previously and that faculty responded to, there were 6 themes that came up, and I'm going to send these 6 themes out for you all to vote on in terms of priority. But I also wanted to make sure that I didn't overlook any of the themes that you discussed among your groups, okay? I will also give those faculty who didn't have a chance to give input the first time, I'll give them a chance to give input if they missed it. So those six themes were compensation / benefits, and specifically more transparency about how money is spent. Like, for example, the recent equity and promotion / merit raises that occurred. Evaluating administration. We're supposed to be updating, improving the survey that goes out evaluating the deans. However, there's been a lot of discussion about, this may be different for some of you, but at least in my own department, we have as faculty, we have much more interaction with our chairs than our deans, but faculty often don't evaluate their chairs because of the process that is set up to do so. Most faculty feel uncomfortable doing that. So, evaluating administration was a theme. HSC, the challenge that you all, our colleagues, are facing on North Campus. The last thing I want to do here today is share with you all a response from one of our colleagues to the survey that I read to the Board of Regents last week. This one is basically workload. So, and it's sort of multifaceted. Faculty looking for protection of their time for research and teaching, because with more and more people leaving, we all find ourselves doing more and more of the work, including more and more of the service responsibilities. So people are feeling overworked and understaffed. I'm sure Grace Faustino would agree, who is president of Staff Council, that when faculty are stressed out, we often also stress out staff. So basically, we're working in tandem with each other. Our working conditions affect each other. And then lastly was technology and the need to update technology and have different kinds of technology available. Is there any other general themes, large themes you would like to see put on the survey that goes out in terms of deciding what our priorities are going to be? It's also possible that we can designate various subcommittees, including one for student success, which Dr. Cheek is inviting us to do.
What happened to reducing the required course load for students?
That's what
Yeah.
I wanted to ask her.
Yeah, and I actually asked her that exact question I met with her on Friday, and I told her a number of faculty are concerned about the 15 credit hours. And I'm still waiting to hear back. We're still waiting to hear back from Provost Holloway and President Stokes about that. Because remember, we posed it to them and gave them time. So Dr. Cheek's response to me was something along the lines of, well, the Opportunity Scholarship will take care of that because it will cover more units. And I backed her up and said, but the point is 15 credit hours is really difficult for students to maintain. especially
Especially if they're working for you.
if they're working, taking care of families, taking care of siblings, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we should make that, I'll make it, along with these, I'll make it a student success category. And that can be,
It feels the 15 credit hours feels anachronistic to me, like it harkens back to a day when parents could afford to pay for their kids' college education, you know, and
yeah. Well, I also,
it's not the case anymore.
I also talked about the fact that, you know, why is this 4-year graduation rate being used, right? And I said, you know, when I was back in the day, you know, I didn't graduate in 4 years. I graduated in 5. So why are we holding students to this? And she said there's more flexibility now because of the Opportunity Scholarship for students to take longer. So I'd like to see us push for lowering that credit hour, because I think what happened is they took the 120 credit hour requirement, graduation requirement, and divided it by, I think, 8. And that's how they came up with the 15 credit requirement. So I can't imagine being an undergraduate taking 5 classes or however many 15 credit hours. And I think we're all in agreement with that because we see what happens in the classroom, right? When students are trying to maintain that.
So just a
Could you tell me your name, please?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm Ann Waldorf. I'm one of the senators from HSC.
Hi, Ann. I'm sure I have.
I'm back. They told me I was the alternate, and then 2 months later, I'm here.
That's how we get you. Yeah. Oh, alternate.
Benny can give you the scoop on what it's really like to work. I have 2 thoughts about the student success. First of all, I think what we have to be really mindful of is that it is not just students who are working or caring for family. For a lot of the students who come in, 15 is still hard.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think
Good point.
and I also think that those kids who were in high school during COVID, you know, we have no idea really the long-term extent of what that did to them. The second thing, the only thing which I wanted to ask the Vice Provost is, we keep talking about how to help these students recover academically, but I think we have to be mindful of what it does to a student to fail out of college or lose their scholarship if they already are coming in with either oh, I got this, and then suddenly they don't. Or people say, oh, I don't know if college is for you, you know, nobody else in your family would, you know, all that stuff. But I don't hear in her plan a comprehensive way to address the psychological and emotional impact of failing something that they are trying hard to do. And now I should be completely transparent and tell you I come out of the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, so I already look at things a little differently.
So we're putting you on it, Ann.
Well, I wouldn't mind, but I just think we can't just always think about the logistics.
Yes.
You know, I haven't talked to a faculty member on either side of Lomas or all the way south who goes, boy, these new freshmen, they're a lot more mature and got it together than the ones that had. No one says this, right? And yet we keep just doing logistical fixes as opposed to what is this doing to them psychologically to attempt a college education and not being able to succeed.
You know, it feels like this is a trend. It feels to me like this is a trend that started before COVID.
I agree.
And
I think it's, yeah.
you know, COVID definitely exacerbated it
I would
and
agree.
accelerated it, made it more severe, but yeah.
Ian.
I was just gonna say, I think the reason they got obsessed with the 4-year graduation rate is that's one of the, I think it's 20% of the US. news
Right,
and local
yes.
rankings.
Right. Which is not a
Yeah, they're
good
fixing that,
reason.
but it
Yeah.
doesn't really, I mean, you need to lower the total units you need for graduation. Because having 5 classes at a time is too much for most kids, I think. And the idea that, well, if you're doing poorly in one and you have to drop then you can take a intense half semester class, that just increases the work.
Yeah.
Makes
Yeah.
the problem worse.
Agreed.
Seemed like Professor Cheek was a little locked into a narrative. Not
Yeah,
the
and
story.
when I talked to her the first time, I wasn't sure what she was including in that student success, and then because my area of expertise is faculty development. And that's not what she's talking about. That, you know, and that is the purview of the Center for Teaching and Learning, as it should be. So my sense that I got from her was, you know, some of the things she mentioned, like having semester check-ins and things like that. So I think if we are able to form a faculty senate subcommittee on student success, I think we could push back a little bit more on what that should entail, and including students' emotional well-being, psychological well-being. Yeah, treating them as whole people rather than a graduation rate. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just like to add, like, I see everything you're saying in a completely different area of campus, and I would like to see this committee, if we can have it, address, there's some really ugly discourse about upholding standards to the detriment of students without evaluating what those standards are and why they're here and where they come from. And it's really, really hard as a junior faculty to see students failing out because of other areas that want to enforce the standard at all costs. You know, it's just really hard.
And I think the euphemistic word they use is rigor.
Yeah.
And
British you.
What's that?
With the British you.
Yes. Ezra?
Oh, I was curious, Dr. Cheek mentioned that the students aren't getting feedback in a regular way. I've been using the gradebook feature on Campus to Learn forever, you know, and it gives you a fairly good idea of how you're doing. And I was just wondering if you guys know if there's a lot, do we have a lot of colleagues who don't use that? Or do you have objections to using it? Anyone specifically here?
I think it became pretty apparent during COVID that there was a percentage of faculty who don't use the learning management system, you know, and that even just that was a lift for some people. Heather, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think there's a lack of accountability when it comes to expectations of grading on time. Whatever that might look like to anybody and how to get that information to students. Nobody really follows up. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm giving you side eyes. I'm not saying.
Well, no, I mean, I think that's something that's worthwhile for us to encourage in our colleagues. Or to start a conversation about that. I think, you know, it really does make a difference to the students, regardless of, you know, in addition to all the discussion that we need to have about, you know, whether or not the standards are reasonable and, you know, rigor, but they do need that feedback.
Nancy, is there anybody on?
Oh, we got a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, but is there anybody online?
Oh, yeah, and I think Nina has a question.
Okay, so Panina, we'll come right to you in just a minute. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm Roberta in the College of Nursing. And I teach junior level classes and some freshman level classes, not to mention graduate classes. So I'm one of those people that has a real gripe about the workload. But I will tell you that I have one of the classes that a lot of people either drop or flunk. I mean, it's like I go from a class of 50 down to about 35 every semester. That's a big chunk of people now. Almost all of them. It's because they actually never do any of the work. Any of it, they don't. You can see the online book, they don't open it, they don't do any of the assignments, they're doing nothing. I don't know. That's not a rigor problem. That's a different issue. And even in the freshman class, almost all who do not pass, they're not passing because they never show up. And I don't know how this fits into this conversation and consideration, but it has to be a consideration. You just can't say there's too much rigor and there's too much focus on my students all get their grades within 7 days. It's all on Canvas. They get extensive feedback. They don't show up. And
So, Roberta,
I can't fix that.
it sounds like we need some kind of mechanism to find out why.
Why they're not.
Why,
showing
yeah.
I see a lot of that too.
That's big.
Panina, go ahead.
This might seem weird, but like the flip side of this is that maybe we could also put some pressure on the admin in recognizing that having teachers with secure positions from year to year that students can identify with as at least an informal mentor or advisor also makes a huge difference in their retention and success. I've been part of this Mellon group that is actually working on instituting some sort of program like this to promote the study of the humanities. And one of the first things they did was they said, we need people to teach the intro class who can also teach the next class that students can stay in touch with. And the more that the university as a system relies on adjunct professors who are temporary and who switch from semester to semester, that actually shakes up part of that system too. And so just to kind of like also say, but this too, it's not just about like the rigor of the students dropping in that first semester or getting, you know, instructors to use better like scaffolded assignments. That all helps, yes, but some of it also needs to be recognized that what were we saying? Teaching conditions are learning conditions, and that affects the picture as well.
Thank you, Panina. You're getting a round of applause. So it sounds like maybe the Student Success Subcommittee will be a popular group. Trish.
I just have one comment because I don't teach undergrads, I teach graduate students. But I wonder, this 15 credit hours as an undergrad has to be affecting the applications for graduate school. Because graduate schools, competitive programs are not going to look at you if you have under a 3.0 or 3.5. I mean, how's it affecting people trying to get into medical school?
That's a good question too. Yeah. Relationship between undergrad and grad education. Okay. That's a great question, Trish. Okay. If you will permit me, I have one request and one thing I just want to read to you really quick. One, Michael, I got your email. Thank you so much. About RAC, I will email you and Michael Graves. Is there anyone else in this group who could serve on RAC in order to make sure we have a breadth of faculty from different disciplines on RAC? RAC, if you don't recall, is the Research Allocation Committee. It's the committee that decides which faculty receive research money based on their applications. They've received 24 applications, and so we want to make sure we have a full committee in order to make sure that work doesn't fall on just one or two people, right?
I've served on the RAC committee forever, and I didn't think it would be that great, but it's super engaging and super fun, and it's really gratifying to be able to award a small grant to support someone's research and support funding students and stuff. So we have a good time, and it's a great group to work with. So please join us.
And thank you, Ezra. And Michael Graves, Department of Anthropology, who chairs the group, he and your group were able to get an additional $20,000 or something, $25,000 for faculty last year. So think about it, reach out to your colleagues. We could really we've got 3 engineers now, 1 ECE, 2 mechanical, so well represented. We could use more people. We have, if you take a look at the rosters for all committees can be found online, and see if your discipline is underrepresented. And it's important too, because what research looks like in different disciplines, it looks different, right? So sometimes it's useful to be able to explain how a discipline not just the process of research, but what's the the epistemology, their ways of knowing can be different. So I want to leave you with just finally, this is just one page, one Word doc page. This is the response, one of the responses that was in the survey that people responded to. And I wanted to share this with you because I am trying to find ways to make Faculty Senate feel like it means something and that it can do something and that we do have power to make change. And so that's why I wanted to share with you. This is a response from one of our North Campus colleagues on the Faculty Senate. And I read this to the Board of Regents. President Stokes, Provost Holloway, and Dr. Ziodonis was also present. And this was one of the last comments that was made at that meeting. So I really appreciate this person's bravery and the time they took to write this response. So of course it was anonymous. Physician burnout is at a crisis point. The HSC solution seems to be to simply make all of the remaining people work harder. Both empathy and common sense seem to have gone out the window. I have personally witnessed physicians, junior faculty, trying to communicate that they are at their breaking point, get shut down in a meeting. We say we care about wellness, but we don't actually seem to care about wellness. The thing that is most needed currently is time flexibility, not mediation classes or other additional time commitments aimed at wellness. People who say, if I can't drop down to a 0.8 FTE clinical for a while, then I'm going to have to leave, actually mean it. I am personally aware of several physicians who in the last year made a request to reduce clinical time either for research or for FMLA, and the requests were either denied or if FMLA was approved, they were punished in other ways, and they are all gone. I understand that granting a request to reduce clinical time is problematic. However, having dedicated, experienced, but burned out physicians leave UNM, or worse, leave New Mexico, all caps, forever and completely, is much, much worse. When someone leaves, the idea that giving them 0.2 FTE off would have convinced them to stay at 0.8 FTE suddenly looks a better option. Mind you, leadership almost always says, we're better off without them. They can say that, but that doesn't make it true. Every time a burned out person who is doing their job, however grumpily or inefficiently, leaves, the load on the remaining people is that much higher, increasing the chances that even more people will leave. It's depressing for everyone involved, physicians and supporting faculty and staff. The remaining physicians look around and think, this experience of drinking from a fire hose will never end. I will never achieve any kind of reasonable work-life equilibrium at this institution. This is currently a very bad positive feedback loop that I am seeing in multiple HSC departments, and the knee-jerk way that UNM chairs handle it, all caps, is not working and is actively making the problem worse. New Mexico already has disadvantages in recruiting physicians, reputation of Albuquerque regarding safety, schools, lower salaries, fewer opportunities for trailing spouses. The one thing that we can control is whether UNM is a nice place to work. We're not doing a good job with that currently for our physicians. The culture of HSC desperately needs work. So I'm sharing that with you because I want you to know that the Board of Regents heard this, you know, our top administrators heard this. And I want to continue working with all of you to make sure that, you know, there's a body that I can't recall at the moment. Finney, maybe you remember. It's a body, that guides it's guidelines for Board of Regents, and they talk about a three-legged stool in these guidelines. And those three legs are the Board of Regents, administration, and faculty. And I think for too long, it's just been this two-legged stool, you know? I mean, I think about when I'm in that Board of Regents meeting, I've only been here 11 years, which is half or a third of the time that some of you have been here. And at 11 years, and I look at the Board of Regents, President Stokes, Provost Holloway, I've been there longer than any of them. So how is it that faculty don't have more input in what goes on at the university? Because we're what stays, hopefully, right? We are where the continuity happens, right? So I read this to you not to bring us all down, but I think hearing from each other in this way and then making sure that the administration hears it too, it's going to help us make this a better place to live and work. And I will say, you know, I do attend the Health Sciences Council meetings, and there was a gentleman there, and I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but he interviews people as they leave.
Oh, Dr. Sood.
Dr. Sood. And he said, you know, 40% of faculty say when they're leaving that it's a matter of compensation, but it's never the only reason. And so, and Natalie, you were there too, if I get it wrong, but he also talked about, you know, they talk about workplace environment as also right up there with compensation. So we can't always do a whole lot about compensation, but we should be able to do a lot more about the environment in which we work. So I want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you for coming out on Halloween, and I hope you have a good, safe time tonight. And I look forward to working with you further, and we'll see you in November.